Understanding conscious evolution. What is that? And what does the heart have to do with that? What does resonance have to do with that? And that's really been my journey, up until writing the book. To be with that, what does it feel like to be with emergence or evolution as it's consciously evolving? Then everything starts to fall into place. In terms of, and now I'll relate it to embodiment. So embodiment, is that the fullest joy is that I'm here fully expressing my soul essence, right? I'm not needing to think about what's an illusion anymore.
Hello there. So today's guest is Shelley Darling. She's an esteemed international dowser. She's a speaker, a teacher, author. Her journey spans decades of unwavering commitment to wholeness, conscious evolution, and embodied heart awakening. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but we're also going to be talking about her book that she's put together with a whole bunch of people, which is called Navigating Home, Restoring Wholeness with Earth Together. That is really the collective people that she's put that together with is the Sacred Evolutionary Dowsing Consortium. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're also going to be talking about balance. Balance in life, balance on the earth, balance in working with spirit. So, Shelley, thank you so much for coming along. It's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, so happy to have met you, Tim, and to be here with everyone and with you. Yeah, excited.
So let's dive in, Shelley, with the book, Navigating Home, Restoring Wholeness with Earth Together. Tell us about that. Tell us about the story of putting that together. How did that come about?
All right. So really, it's the aggregation of my life and my life's work, visibly, consciously coming together around 2011, working with Barbara Marx Hubbard, and really understanding conscious evolution. What is that? And what does the heart have to do with that? What does resonance have to do with that? And that's really been my journey, up until writing the book. So I do have a first book, which is really more of a sort of part memoir, introducing people to dowsing through travel, exploration from Australia to New Zealand. And this is really part of the answering your question, is because that was where I met Barry Brailsford, a cultural professor from New Zealand who was a masterful dowser and worked with Hamish Miller, as we all know. And that really opened a way for a relationship with a confederation of people that most people don't really know about, the Waitaha in New Zealand. And this is very much tied to the book, because the book, number one, is written as in a lot of nautical terms, and the chapters are voyages, and it takes us into the exploration more of how do you work, just number one, from yourself, working on homes and land, to working with a consortium. So in 2015, from this sort of journey that I had taken, I was really nudged to create a group of planetary healers, stewards, dowsers, and that with the understanding, and at this time, now we've used this language a lot, but at that time, this language about that together we're greater than the sum of our parts was not being spoken. And what happens when we do learn, how do we maintain resonance as a group, as a collective? And how do we let go and feel safe enough to be in a transparent situation, let's just say with dowsers, who many of us have our own skills and information and protocols, and actually give it to the group, being willing to go like, I trust enough that this is an abundant universe. And what we discovered, and what I already knew, was that exponentially the work becomes amplified in a way that we could never do it as one person. And the insights and information and the toolbox that becomes available to everyone all at once, right? You can't hold on to, this is mine. And so when you take that energy and you learn how to focus it on an emergent flow, really we call it the pulse of evolution, or call it, you can call it whatever you want, the DNA of the living Akash, you can call it. So when people learn how to work in that manner, then things can happen in the most miraculous way. And we all share, someone's, does radionics, someone's a feng shui master, and all of a sudden, everybody's confidence level just completely leaps. It becomes more of a quantum resonance, right? And and I think this is where we really need to go. And that was really, so that's in a long answer to your question, but basically there was a movement that happened within myself. I mean, now there's so many groups doing stuff like this. I don't know of many dozen groups, but where we can actually have what I'm hearing is like we work as a constellation of, like a constellation of stars, and then the composite of the collective, like, really shifts the land frequency very quickly, and the bottom line, love happens.
You were talking a lot there in terms that I understand. But is there like an example that you could give where some of that, that work that you do as a group has really kind of taken hold?
Hmm. Well, in the book itself, there's uh, probably 5 case studies that we've done, working from uh, you know a land conservation uh, project to tiny house community, or people who are trying to create intentional communities. Well, that's coming to me is a tiny house community where you have a group of really beautiful hearts wanting to live with the land, but they have no idea of how to work with the land really, other than having maybe a garden. But maybe individually they all have their spiritual gifts, or they're discovering their spiritual gifts. So this tiny house community in Oregon, um, and actually where my daughter happened to be living, so that was an added piece, right? And my little granddaughter was born there. But so here comes the owner of the land, who has a really beautiful intention of creating a community of people that work together, love each other. Well, it's not working. Hello. You got this person and that person, and they have different ideas. And so what was happening was they would have these meetings, and they really weren't working. Not, different people were happy with different people at different times. So when you go in as a collective and we breathe open, discovering number one, oh, hello, it used to be a nursery, and there's only one tree standing, one grandmother tree standing. And there's certain things that one person who works with elementals, might have a deep or shamanic awareness. Or when I went there, I looked around and sort of with my dowsing skills, there's no water. And, and then there's another person who was doing some kind of uh, evolutionary work, but she is all about sacred geometry, but nobody gets what she's doing. So you've got all these different elements. And so when you take the collective, and in that particular case, Charlie, who does earth grid work, and, you bring the radionics, or, so we're getting a holographic, if you can imagine, we each have our holographic gifts, but when they come together, and then we start to listen. And that's really the key. What does the land want? And everybody has a certain piece to it. I don't have every piece, right? And so I have that heart resonance piece. So I'm holding the space with the resonance. And so we begin to work with that group. And in that case, most of the people were willing to work with us. And so all of a sudden, the land starts to shift. People start to wake up. They start to understand sacred geometry. They start to understand heart resonance. And so it becomes really, if you think of an orchestra, right? If each one of we might have each one of those people playing at a certain time, but when the orchestra comes in that harmonic together, the whole place is affected, right? Where certain people, if someone was playing the cello, well, there might be someone in the audience who really doesn't like the cello. I mean, it could be, but when that constellation of energy happens, then exponentially there is a vibratory field, right? In that orchestra, in that beautiful theater. So we are in a theater. And so this is really what I feel is, and then the last piece is working with Earth, because we're not, a lot of people say peace on Earth, or let's make, or I'm gonna do my thing and help this, on Earth. But when we're working with Earth, so in order to do that, everyone's level of awareness has to be heightened. And that was really what happened. And little by little, the construct, as an example, inside of that tiny house community, the people that were not in resonance with that higher frequency left to their highest good, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the attractor field, right? All of a sudden another baby is born there with a couple who loves to garden and who's willing to take over the garden, and you get the right relationship. So I think that's what we're evolving to, and I think that's really what this book is attempting to express. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So is the way that you work, are you saying that you actually go on, so in that example, did you go as a group, did you go on site, or was it all remote
Okay.
work?
So a lot of it is remote work, but there's always a liaison. So um there's usually, like, right now we're working on two schools. So there's always a liaison. And if we're lucky enough, it's someone who's right there. So like that person becomes, in the tiny house community, it was me, because I would go there here and there. So it went on, but it was mostly done with the consortium remotely. Yeah.
And I guess there's a kind of a harmony here where, with my, relationship, I mean, Hamish Miller was effectively my mentor. It wasn't a kind of formalized, yes, right, let's sit down and do this. It just was what it was. And of course, he and Barry were just shared so much together. And Barry Brailsford's books are incredible pieces of work. And his I don't know a huge amount about his actual sort of his involvement with the Wataha at a kind of archaeological level, but I know that he's hugely influential in changing the view. So I suppose what I'm really getting at is it's just really interesting to meet you with the way that you're working with the land, coming at it from that side, from Barry's side, if you like. And I, ended up working in a similar way, but slightly differently. But I'm coming at it from Hamish's side, which is really interesting in terms of, I'll get there in the end, in terms of the way the balance actually forms in the end. Now, well, it's not the balance in the end. Life. This is what is so wonderful about the way that life is. Now, the other thing that you said there earlier on, talking about that particular project, how does the Sacred Evolutionary Dowsing Consortium exist day to day? Do you lead that? Is there groups of people that you have running consecutive? Tell me about that.
Okay. Um, Part of the hope within the book is that people will wake up into how to do this.
Mm.
So yeah, so I would be the navigator, if you want to call it that. Like I hold the space. It's the consortium is based around. I was really clearly prescribed to use the 12 around 1 model. That was also important sacred geometry, and the consortium. Basically, I'm running the consortium, and it gets, I decide sort of when I'm being called to put, so usually like twice a year, let's just say that.
Okay.
Twice a year. The goal is that people feel confident enough, like there's certain people in the consortium, there's never more than 12, and you can continue to come in as much as you want. And it's always a different project. Like I said, we worked on a bush school last year. Now we've got a school in New York City and a school in North Carolina that we're working with, because that's where we're being called to. We want to do that for the children, to create environments that really support them, and the teachers, and never mind, and really to create that sort of motherly energy. So basically, the consortium is running constantly. People are staying connected during the week. We come together once a week, and And I'm like, also maybe I never thought about this, but maybe a weaver. That's what I'm weaving the information. I'm weaving, like that's what I do really well. So, and also teaching people how to feel comfortable enough to open. We always open in what I call heart resonance. So it can look like whatever it wants to look like, but basically it is a setting the field. So you're setting the field for the group every time you come together with the understanding and relationship. So you're supporting the creating the container or the vessel for people to drop in as one. And that was the gift of the book, that it took, and probably why it took so long was because, you know, how do you get six people to write a book as one voice, not as an anthology, right? So the same thing with the consortium. How does that container get built so that everyone moves as a flowing field? Or if you think about it as migrational routes of how the birds move, how the dolphins move. There's always one that will come forward. And how do you learn? And this was really Barry's really major gift to me, was to really understand the nature of flow. It's really bottom line. How do we do that? What the birds do? It's in our. It is in. It is and that the understanding of the unified field is its essence. Of the field is to unify. So we don't have to try to become unified. We just need to learn to be with that. What does it feel like to be with emergence or evolution as it's consciously evolving? Then everything starts to fall into place. The right information comes down, and then you're getting that, as I said, that concert kind of experience. So yeah, so I'm holding it, and the book is really, the hope is that people um, get enough from it or come into the consortium so that they can begin to experience it and go, this is how it's being done. And I can do this too. And does it have to be with just dowsing? No, it can be with any group. But understanding the components, just as if you were learning how to play piano, understanding the keys and the sounds that they make, and how to make it sound like, something you'd want to listen to and something the universe wants to listen to. And ultimately, anything other than love will leave, or people won't be attracted, or they you know it's important to understand how to really deal with triggers, because we're human beings and things will come up. There is a mixture of somatic information, um dowsing information, land enchantment information, and some feng shui, so that because to me that's really evolutionary dowsing, because it takes it into a field of wholeness. So we're working as a whole living system. So we're becoming aware. So I'm always dropping into the field, understanding whole systems health. What does that really mean? We as a living ecosystem within our bodies work with Earth. Yeah. That was a lot, so sorry.
No, it's great. It's fabulous. Yeah, fabulous. So just because we've got a real mixture of subscribers on the channel, real mixture of people that watch this, the videos that go up here. And some of them are, very well advanced and will completely get what you're saying. And now some of them, even, if they've stuck with the conversation so far, heart resonance, love. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about what you mean by heart resonance and living within that as a principle, because some people kind of, yes, they get the idea of love and physical love and all of that, but heart resonance is a very different thing.
I think people can understand. So if you're listening, you can understand it in terms of, let's just bring it all the way down and ground it. So you have a family, you're living by yourself, or a family, doesn't really matter, but you have a relationship with the home you live in. You come, no matter what you do, you come home to your shelter at night, even if it's a tent, you know, and and we don't trust ourselves as human beings. We are affected by lots of going ons in the world, and the collusion and all kinds of things that are going on. It's very hard to find our feet, find our grounding, right? So honestly, heart resonance is literally how to find that place within yourself that you are moving. What and so interesting, going back to Barry, how do you live in your knowing? How do you know that what you're feeling is true and is true for yourself, and you can live by that, and that becomes your value. So heart resonance is just means resound. It means, how do you vibrate with your environment? How do you vibrate with another person? Are you finding that you're alone a lot? Are you finding that you don't feel well, or you have headaches, or any of that stuff? So that's really the core piece is really learning how to just feel good about who you are, what's moving you forward. And I think joy is a real key. Like, can you begin to get a sense of that? And heart resonance is really creating, is opening a field of relationship, because it's just a relationship. Resonance is a relationship between two things, right? Um, And it doesn't matter what we call, God, creator, whatever it is for you, even if you are an atheist, it has nothing to do with that. It means that I, as a human being, can walk in according to the law of my heart, the law of my love. And then how do I conjoin that with a group? Because I don't feel comfortable in a group, right? Or I'm forced to be in a group, or my job is, so whatever it is. So it's beginning with really understanding um, that we're living in a conscious universe, number one. What is that? Number two, that my relationship with my environment, my house, I have control of that. Not control over, but I have a choice, and to begin to get what that is. And so what tends to happen is, like, let's just say you've never been to an opera, you know, and you go in and you're willing. So resonance requires that you're willing. You have an open heart, right? To be willing to discover, okay, I don't even know what this is, but I'm willing. And then you place yourself there so that you can be informed. I mean, ultimately, it's how miracles work. We have to be open for the possibility and the potential of life coming and gifting us something that we're not aware of. So that gift is the experience of heart resonance. There is a sensibility that, as Einstein said, is this a friendly universe? That was his last question, right? That the universe, no matter if I have a landlord that's kicking me out of my house tomorrow, or whatever, that I have a sense that something has my back. And it's not necessarily going to be your husband. It's not necessarily going to be your best friend, because sometimes we do things to each other that we don't mean. But ultimately, the resonance, when you're talking about heart resonance, you're talking about the pulse of creation, not just because people say, well, I'm in my heart. Well, it's not, it's more than that. It's actually being in resonance with a sensibility. And Barry, I'll just say this, described it really good in the Song of the Old Tides, where the grandfather's talking and he's explaining to the child what knowing is. It's not an intellectual knowing, it's a sensibility, it's a sensate experience. And when you get that, then your whole life changes. And really, ultimately, that is why I dowse, or take people on a journey dowsing a house. And then you are doing it as a home healer. You're healing the home. But what's amazing is, and was my big discovery in the beginning, was I had no idea that the effect and influence of where we live has everything to do, I would say over 50% of how we're in relationship with whatever we're doing, whether we're working, having trainings, or going to therapists, or whatever it is. That, wow, when I realized that my house is having an effect on how I think, and how I feel, then yeah, we want to take care of that. We want to, get that. And you talked about balance. So it's a little more than just balance. It's to be in resonance with everything, feeling like it's, in, I guess the word would be uplifting. It's an uplifting energy that we feel like every step we're taking is something we're gaining new perspective of life, something like that.
So, do you think some people that perhaps are a little bit more, should we say, further along the path? I don't like these kind of expressions because it means like we've got a starting point and then you've got an end point, and this is far better to be over here. But let's say somebody has a bit more with whatever.
Okay, so this is a really beautiful thing about the consortium, and this is the most beautiful thing about working with a group. If you have this ability, and it is slightly a skill, it doesn't take much to learn, but basically that I used to think I need, oh no, I can't work with groups because I need to work on myself. There is that self level of self improvement or self, what do they used to call it? Self help, self help books or something, right? So, but what I discovered was that you work in a group and your self relationship with yourself is going to exceed anything you can possibly imagine because the group creates the vibration, the container for a larger awakening. And if it's a supportive group, not next necessarily a support group, but if it is a group that, so it doesn't matter, who knows. Oh, you're a master, and I don't know this, and so you self-deprecate, right? You make yourself feel smaller. No, because it's set up. The con- it's set up so that everybody wakes up at the same time. So there can be someone who has no idea about what I'm talking about, but may come in, and all of a sudden, it might take them one or two times to kind of get it, but all of a sudden they're popping new ideas. And that's what happens in a group. You start you know some there's that whole thing of 1 + 1 = 3, right? So it's not just I have to plod along my path, but if I'm willing to open to a safe infrastructure of that contains, love and and presence is key. And, we call it an extended pause is key because if everyone has opinions and they're talking over each other, that's never going to work and you're never going to get anywhere and your project's never going to take off. And you would be better to do it by yourself, actually. Right? But if you understand some of these principles, um, then your body calms down. So in a field of resonance, your body calms down. You feel like you can open to receive, because that's really the key piece. I'm open to receiving something I don't know. As soon as that happens, and your body, because this is all somatic experience, if your body feels safe with these people or this group or me, then something starts to change, and you can wake up to the level that I can hear what needs to be said, and your body's receiving it. And the other key word is integration, that the way our bodies integrate information is through the breath. And if you have a group that's talking over each other and nobody's breathing and or even if you get excited about something, then nobody can quite re- th- nobody's body really totally relaxes. So there's a point, where there's a way to be able to receive information in a way that allows you to, I think popping is a really good, like you pop open. We know when we all have epiphanies, we love that. When like, oh my God, I had no idea, right? It's kind of like that, living in that. And that's very natural. That's the way we're meant to be living. And I really believe dowsing is a key piece to that because we need to become aware that um, our houses, absolutely can affect our well-being, right? Mental health.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, mental and emotional. But earlier on, you talked about that feeling like this, that you have the support. When we were talking about heart resonance, you were talking about the feeling that you have the support of. Uh, you basically said like the conscious cosmos. Would that be like maybe people could equate that to the feeling of having support from spirit, from
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, it may come to you in different ways, absolutely.
um, yeah, we're using the body as a guide, and we've talked today about the heart and feeling our way into the heart to understand where it wants to take us and what opportunities it can lead us into. Um, and this is really, you mentioned, I think, the word embodiment. Maybe you didn't, but it's about you were suggesting that there's a level of healing that the body needs to go through in order to understand that it is safe. Effectively, that's not what you said, but effectively that's what we're talking about. Now, if we relate this to somebody like Eckhart Tolle, for example, who talks a huge amount about the illusory nature of things and thought and all of that kind of approach, how do you equate, sorry if this sounds too heavy or too serious a question, but how do you equate that kind of illusory nature of thought with embodiment, the facet of we're trying to embody things as well?
Okay. Well, first of all, in terms of embodiment, we think of descending in the body, right? Well, I don't want to really be my body. I want to do the spiritual work. I want to work. And there was always a separation between embodiment and ascension, right? And I spent years teaching relationship trainings and bringing people back into their bodies because the tendency is to want to ascend. But if you're ascending and disassociating, in some ways, you're missing the point, because in some level, we chose to be here at this time, whether you like it or not, and there's a gift there. Can you find the gift? And so in terms of this illusionary, everything's an illusion. um, I honestly think, I mean, everyone needs to go the path they need to go and to wake up in the way they need to wake up. Um, for me, if we just keep saying it's an illusionary world, I'm never going to be fully present and be fully here. Yes, I can be. I think there was really a time, if you think about it, there was a time when all the monks, and they went up. Where did they go? They went up to the mountains. Why? Because it was the most highest realm, closest to heaven, closest to the universe, and I could do that kind of study. And maybe this is another way to explain it. Maybe if I'm going off, you can let me know. But um, so when I'm describing a house, I'll describe it as a beta house, an alpha house, a delta house, right? So a beta house would be, and I hope I'm going to tie this together, would be one that you, just for people who might be listening, might be one where you walk by a house, someone lives there, but you're not really seeing them. The windows are closed shut, and there's a sense of contraction. Or you walk into a house and there's a sense of contraction. You can feel that, right? And the idea is to raise, just like you would if you had a cut, and you would clean it out, and then you put a Band-Aid on it. You want that cut to heal. So same thing with a house. So I love asking people, so what do you think? Do in terms of a beta house and an alpha house is where there's more light, essentially. People want to come in, children want to come into your house. Maybe even people, don't want to leave, because they love your house so much. Or I want a house like that. But a delta house would be more like a Zen house, a house where, obviously, it would be like a temple, right? So the question would be, if you were dowsing someone's house, where would you like to, what level of frequency do you want to get that to, And inevitably they say, oh, delta, absolutely. I'm like, well, think about it. Think about it, because it's the way you want to live. If you want to live as a monk and a Zen, yeah, absolutely. But do we really want to be in that kind of, are we really doing our earthly work? Are we really going to discover, if that's your purpose? That's true. Small percentage of people. But do we want to have a delta space in our home? Absolutely. Do you want to have a place where your body can relax? If you're sick, you can go lay down. Or there's a place where you commune with Creator, God, whatever you want to call that energy, right? It's why we love to go to waterfalls. The energy's moving. We have a sense of, or why even the pulpit was always put at a crossing in a church, right? Because it's an access point, right? So the delta room. So in terms of, and now I'll relate it to embodiment. So embodiment, is that the fullest joy is that I'm here fully expressing my soul essence, right? I'm not needing to think about what's an illusion anymore. I know I am it. I am being clear, right? We want to have that sense of clarity. So to me, if we keep talking about illusion, this is illusion, we're always giving people a sense of, I want to get out of this body, right? This is an illusionary world, right? But there's something really fantastic. and alive. We start to feel the aliveness of Earth and what we're really here for. And then it's a joy to be fully embodied because I am an expression of God. I am an expression of love. I am an expression. And what I'm doing and my work is my joy ultimately. Nobody wants to be doing a job that is just a job, right? So I think that's the really big shift in consciousness is that we are here, and the tricky part is, well, sometimes if you remember, like we've all had this experience where you're not feeling so great, you're bummed out, your landlord just evicted you or whatever, but your friend is like, oh, just being your joy, and we hate that, right? We're like, F you. So to me, like bringing it all the way home is like, that's the point. And I think that's why this book is called Navigating Home, because how do I navigate myself home to be fully embodied and fully in that experience of creation, evolving, the magic of, call it whatever you want, the magic of life. And I feel like um, you know, that's when our landlord could tell us. I'm joking because this is a situation actually it's kind of like very funny in my life right now. But it's where any situation could happen to us, but we still have a sense of home. We still have a sense of, and I know that there are refugees, and I know there's suffering going on in this world that would be looking at me saying, come on. At the same time, when we feel loved, when we feel that sensibility that if I just trust something's going to move me, in a way that I'm going to be safe, or I'm going to, something's going to happen. And I just know in enough times of my circumstance of actually sometimes having 35 cents to my name, that if I just stay tuned with this home and that connection to spirit, which is what you're talking about, then something does happen. And we call that a miracle. But if it happens if it happens enough, then we call it synchronicity, and there's a sensibility. And ultimately, I think if you can see in the way I'm talking, I don't need to be talking about the illusions of life. I'm only enabling that to happen more. So I think a lot of it, and for those of us that are willing to stand at the edge of the unknown, then we begin to find out we don't fall into a crack.